A knowledge of the identification of range plants is important to ranchers, farmers, and various field technicians. The goal of this program is to provide students and teachers with an intensive knowledge of the identification and evaluation of range plants. Close-up views of 15 different species of forbs will be provided to aid you in recognizing important identifying characteristics. Under field conditions, the key identification traits of each plant will be discussed by Mr. Billy Bob McMullen, former coach of the Snyder, Texas FFA National Champion Range and Pasture Judging Team, and Mr. Ernie Eckert, coach of the Comfort, Texas FFA State Champion Range and Pasture Judging Team. After the discussion, a graphic of each plant, including length of life, season of growth, origin, grazing value, and reaction to abuse, will be presented.
Here we have bee balm, which is an annual, warm season, invader, and poor. It's sometimes referred to as the horse mint plant because of its mint odor. I know you can't touch them, but you can get down and smell of them, and it has a mint smell to it. The only thing that you could possibly confuse this forb with would be pitcher sage. They have one thing in common: they both have a square stem. But the thing that will distinguish bee balm from pitcher sage is that it has this purple flower that flowers on 2 to 5 places right on down the stem. This one's starting 3, 1, 2, 3. It'll probably, before it's through, will have 5 rings of flowers around this stem. The leaves are a lot like pitcher sage, but they're not as serrated or sawtooth. They are some, but not near as deep. The serrations are not near as deep. But it's a square stem plant, purple flower, that flowers in 2 to 5 places down the stem and has a minty flavor.
Bee balm, Monarda citriodora, annual, warm season, native, poor, invader.
Okay, the next plant we have here is Blackeyed Susan. Blackeyed Susan is an annual. It's warm, it's native, it's an invader, and it's a poor grazing plant. The easiest way to identify Blackeyed Susan is with the cone type seed head flower it possesses. It has a brown to black seed head with a yellow flower that typically has the purplish brown radiating from the very center out. The next item we use to identify this plant is, if you'll notice on the stem all the way down to the leaves, and especially on the bottom side of the leaves, you'll find numerous small hair that are quite rough. And as the plant dies, as this one, we have a dead sample here. Also, you will find on the stem of this dead plant still some old remains of this hair. The plant has a simple leaf structure that is alternating on the stem. Down here we see a very immature plant that is quite young, and you can notice all of the very fine down or hair growing off the leaves. Here we have the old plant. Sometimes it can be confused with an old plant from prairie coneflower. The way to distinguish it between prairie coneflower is the seed head is much softer, and as I pull it, you can notice old seeds falling from it. When you do this with prairie coneflower, you have a much harder seed head.
Blackeyed Susan, Rudbeckia hirta, annual, warm season, native, poor, invader.
Here we have buffalo burr. There's nothing else like it. It's annual, warm season, invader, and poor. Characteristic is stickers all up and down the stem. All up and down the stem. It's scalloped leaves, yellow flowers. An annual, warm season, invader, and poor.
Buffalo burr, Solanum rostratum. Annual, warm season, native, poor, invader.
Here we have a seedling, common broomweed. It's annual, warm season, native, an invader, and poor. Now this doesn't look like the mature plant, so you really need to get out into the field and look at the old plant and then look at this seedling. If you'll notice, the leaves alternate all the way up the stem. They're not opposite each other. They're smooth margin, they're sticky, they're kind of gummy. Of course, I know you're not supposed to handle the plant, but when you're practicing, maybe that'd be a good idea for you to do. Just go ahead and handle the plants, and then I think it'll help you visually when you can't handle them. Of course, as it matures, you get a single round, hard stem with little bitty. These leaves will shrivel to be minute, and you'll have real small yellow flowers. But this is a seedling here, and I think it's something that you need to see, because that's probably what you'll get on contest results, is these small seedlings.
Common broomweed, Guderisia dracunculoides. Annual, warm season, native, poor, invader.
The next plant we have is compass plant. Compass plant is a perennial, warm, native, decreaser, and good grazing. Compass plant can be identified by, first, the flower, which grows at the upper section of the plant, has long petals, kind of like a daisy, and it's usually yellow or white. The second item we use to identify compass plant is on the stems, where you'll find some very rough, prickly hair. And the third and most distinguishing characteristic of the compass plant is the extremely deep scalloped leaves it has. Another item that we use to identify compass plant is it has some very rough, stickery hair that grow on the underside of the leaf, as indicated here. Another characteristic that we use in identifying compass plant, and the way it got its name, is, as you can see, these leaves are aligned in a same line, which is north and south, and as a plant matures, the leaves turn and align in a north and south direction.
Compass plant, Silphium species. Perennial, warm season, native, good, decreaser.
The next plant is curly cup gumweed. Curly cup gumweed is perennial, warm, native. It's an increaser, and it's fair grazing. Curly cup gumweed can be identified by, first, the flower, which is a yellow flower, and as it matures and loses the petals, as we'll see in a dead sample shortly, it forms sort of a cup shape. The next thing we use to identify curly cup gumweed is the distinct saber-tooth serrated leaf edges. As the plant begins to mature, the leaves start to curl or twist, as in curly part of the plant's name. Also, as the leaves mature, they become sticky or tacky when you crush them between your fingers. Another item we use to identify the plant is that it has a slick, smooth stem. On this dead sample, you'll notice the hollow part of the center. This is where the flower used to be, and it kind of leaves a cup or a bowl-shaped residue, and this is where part of the name on curly cup gumweed comes from.
Curly cup gumweed, Grindelia squarosa. Perennial, warm season, native, fair, increaser.
Here's another forb called dotted gayfeather. It's perennial, warm season, native, an increaser, and fair. We have, in this plant, we have some of the old growth, the old stem, plus the new. All the stems come from a crown in the ground. It doesn't branch out up above anywhere. All the stems come from a crown in the ground. And a good way to tell it is that the leaves come from the main stem or from the stem in a corkscrew fashion all the way around the stem. You can look at the stem, here's a leaf here, another one here, another one here, another one around here, all the way at the top. And of course when you get to the top, you can't tell what fashion they're in, but up a certain bit of the way, it's kind of, I call it a corkscrew fashion. You might, in other words, they're long, slender leaves, and they even twist, if you'll notice. When you look at the plant, look at the leaves on dotted gayfeather. They even twist, kind of like a corkscrew. And then they are also attached to the stem in a corkscrew fashion. And if it blooms, it has a purple bloom that's kind of like a cone. A little larger than prairie coneflower, but same fashion. More than likely, though, you'll never get it in the blooming stage. Probably just like this right here.
Dotted gayfeather, Liatris punctata. Perennial, warm season, native, fair, increaser.
Here we have Engleman daisy, which is a deep-rooted perennial, which is, of course, perennial, warm season, a native, decreaser, and it's good. I think the distinguished characteristics to look for on Engleman daisy would be the deep cleft or lobed leaves. I call them Christmas tree leaves. If you have another name that you'd like to put on it would be fine, but they are cleft or lobed. And we have a lot of stiff, bristly hairs on the stems. I think you can see these, probably. Both stems and the leaves. And of course it produces many yellow flowers. But I think the main thing to look for is the bristly hairs on the stems and leaves, and what I call Christmas tree leaves, and the yellow flowers.
Engleman daisy, Englemania pinnatifida. Perennial, warm season, native, good, decreaser.
The next plant we have is half-shrub sundrop. Half-shrub sundrop is perennial, warm, native. It's a decreaser, and it's good grazing. Half-shrub sundrop can be identified by mainly two characteristics. The first characteristic being the leaves. The leaves have a tendency to be long and narrow with fine sawtooth edges. The second characteristic we use in identifying half-shrub sundrop is the base of the plant is, as the name indicates, half-shrub, and it has bark on it, and it's a woody type base, which is quite different than most of our plants. At this stage of the year, this plant has stopped blooming. If it was blooming, it would be producing a yellow, bright yellow flower that would have either a black or a yellow center. These flowers would be located up and down on the stems.
Half-shrub sundrop, Enothera cerulata. Perennial, warm season, native, good, decreaser.
The next plant we have is ironweed. Ironweed is perennial, warm, native. It's an invader, and it's a poor grazer. ironweed can be identified by several characteristics. The first being the distinguishing purple multiple florals that make up one flower up at the top. As you can see right here, there's some still blooming and there's some starting to bloom out and become dry. And after they dry, you have 30 or 40 little pods left up here in the top. It looks like something that you might use in a dried flower arrangement. The next thing we use in identifying ironweed is the leaves. The leaves are prominently serrated around the border. They're a simple leaf that is relatively deeply veined on the top and prominently veined on the bottom side. But look for those real sharp, distinct sawtooth edges. The leaves are also joined on the stem alternately, as in here and here and here. They're an alternate pattern. And the stem is usually slick and free of any type of hair or fuzz.
Ironweed, Vernonia baldwini, perennial, warm season, native, poor, invader.
All right, we have a prairie coneflower here, commonly known as the Mexican hat. It's a plant that the stems are almost square instead of round. If you can take a close look at them, they're I wouldn't call it exactly square, but they're more square than they are round. You can see the cone and then the bright colored petals that are at the base of the cone, which makes it look kind of like a Mexican hat. I guess that'd be one way of identifying it. And then when it first comes up, the leaves are more flat, and as it matures, as it goes along, the leaves get a little more slender. But as it comes up, they're flat, and they're offset just a little bit. If you can see on here, they're not exactly opposite. They're just offset just a little bit, until it gets out to the end. And of course, there's 3 leaflets instead of 2 at the end of the plant. It's a bristly plant also. It's a perennial, it's warm season, it's native and increaser, and it's poor. But if you see it without the cylinder or without the seed head or floret, these leaves can be awful flat at the bottom, but they're offset just a little bit, and this plant's also got little bristly hairs all over it. They're hard to see, but if you look real close, you can see them.
Prairie coneflower, Rotibida columnaris, perennial, warm season, native, poor, increaser.
Here we have 2 samples of Forbes that resemble each other somewhat, not a whole lot, but I think at least we can compare them in this picture. This one is western ragweed. Now, it's perennial, warm season, and it's an invader, and it's poor. Now, the thing to remember about western ragweed, the leaves are opposite each other on the stem. They're opposite, in pairs, opposite. But now let's go to the Mexican sagewort, and if you have, of course, it looks to me like it's been sprayed or flocked with artificial snow. This one especially. Now, there are some species maybe in different parts of the state where just the upper or the top half of the leaf will look like it's been sprayed with snow. and the under part of the leaf will be green, just like western ragweed. But if there's ever a doubt in your mind of whether it would be western ragweed or Mexican sagewort, look at where the leaf is attached to the main stem. The leaves on the Mexican sagewort are alternate. They alternate on sides of the stem. Whereas on western ragweed, they're opposite each other. They alternate on Mexican sagewort, western ragweed, they are opposite of each other. Perennial warm season increaser, and it's poor.
Western ragweed, Ambrosia silostacea. Perennial, warm season, native, poor, invader. Sagewort, Artemisia mexicana. Perennial, warm season, native, poor, increaser.
Here we have a forb called Silverleaf nightshade. Perennial, warm season, native, an increaser, and poor. Distinguishing characteristics of it is there's stickers all up and down the stems. You have little spines or stickers that'll really stick you if you grab it. The leaves may appear to be lobed, but actually they're not, because there's no divisions in them, but they are wavy. The margins are wavy. It produces a purple flower. The petals are purple, but the center is yellow. And as it matures, this will mature into a smooth, round ball where the seeds are left. So the thing to remember, it's real spiny, stickers all up and down the spines, gray-green color, purple petals, yellow center, and wavy margins on the leaves.
Silverleaf nightshade, Solanum elaeagnifolium. Perennial, warm season, native, poor, increaser.
Here we have another forb called Texas croton. It has a distinctive color. I call it a gray. You might want to call it a blue-gray, which is an annual, warm season, invader, and poor. About the only thing that it has any value for is the wildlife, which is quail and turkey and dove. To me, there's no other forb that looks like it, and it has this distinctive gray color, and it flowers in little clusters, several clusters of flowers. It'll make seed up right in the top of the leaf section here, usually surrounded by 3 or 4 leaves, little clusters right at the top. The stems are sort of I suppose, have a down on them. It's not really hairy, but a little gray down on the round stems.
Texas croton, Croton texensis. Annual, warm season, native, poor, invader.